All right, well, we've got an action-packed show today, so I think I'm going to go ahead and dive in and get us started, and some folks will be joining us throughout, and if you got to go early, we understand. Farming calls, and it never waits, right? So as always, this will be recorded as well, and so you'll have access to this later on, and we'll be sending that out. It looks like everybody's got their names worked out. If not, Beth has some instructions in there for us, and we could take a second to do that. Thanks for everybody who's coming on camera too. If you're able to do that, we also understand that some of you are in the middle of feed and other things that are happening in your life, and that's cool too. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Clay Scott. I'm the communications director here at the Good Meat Project. The GMP is a nonprofit with the mission to catalyze marketplace innovation, connection, and education across the meat supply chain in order to increase the economic viability and ecological impact of livestock farmers who invest in healthy land, animals, and people. And as part of our Farmers and Ranchers Marketing Innovation Network, we offer the Lowdown to farmers and ranchers as a way of strengthening your marketing efforts to explore logistical challenges you might be facing each month. Has a specific theme, and this month we're talking about pricing, which I know we're all very interested in, and we have some great guests joining us today to go over some really in-depth tools and things that you will have access to. Really quickly, I just want to kind of review our community agreements. They're on the screen, and I will also drop them in the chat for us really quickly. And if you have any questions about those, feel free to PM me. You can just switch over where it says everyone to Clay Scott and send me a direct message. Also joining us today is Beth from the Good Meat Project team, who many of you will be familiar with. We're glad to have her here as our fearless tech support. If you're having issues with anything Zoom related, please feel free to send her a message in the chat. The run of show is going to be, for those of you who have attended, it'll be a little bit different today. So, and if you haven't, this will feel like we've done it this way all the time, which is exciting. Before I do the run of show, let's talk about our sponsors real fast too. So I want to take a moment to thank our Lowdown sponsors, Farm Generations Cooperative, the creators of the Grown By app. Grown By is a farmer-owned cooperative app for direct-to-consumer sales. They like to offer any farmers associated with the Good Meat Project a 50% discount on their service fee in 2023. For a free one-on-one setup session, and to learn more about that discount, you can email Mark directly at mark@Farm Generations Co-op and tell him you heard about the Grown By app through the Good Meat Project. We'd also like to thank our Lowdown sponsors, Friesla, who provide farmers and ranchers an alternative with USDA-compliant meat processing systems that enable you to have complete control over on-site meat processing. You can learn more about them by visiting their website, friesla.com. So we're going to hop into the show here in just a second. We're going to leave about 15 minutes at the end to do Q&A. During the show, if you have questions that come up or you want to dive deeper on a topic that's touched on by our host or guests, please feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll grab that and put it into a list, and we'll try to get back to as many of those as we can. Thanks for everyone who submitted questions to when you registered. That's what we've used to structure what we're going to talk about today. So hopefully we get to the question that you have. If not, we'll have an opportunity to revisit some of those things on Tuesday with Tim in our office hours, and we'll touch on that at the very end of the show today about how you can come and access that awesome resource. So we're mixing it up today, like I said. So today our host is going to be Tim Joseph. Tim, you want to just wave? So Tim is the founder of Maple Hill Creamery, and he and his wife started that in 2004 with 64 cows on 250-acre dairy farm. And in 2007, they made the switch to 100% grass-fed. And in 2009, launched a value-added cream line using yogurt that he cooked on a stovetop in a restaurant that they had access to down the street. And that's a cool story for another time. Tim is also, he acts as a Good Meat Project's Grass-Fed Alliance and Farmers and Ranchers Marketing Innovation Network program advisor. So we're thrilled that he could be here today to help host this conversation. In the role of guest today, we're going to have Alex Miller, who many of you are used to seeing as the host. Alex is the CEO and chairman of the board of Skillet Farm. Alex is a 7th-generation farmer and the 3rd George Alexander Miller, according to the website, is what I saw. So pulled that down from there. He's been recognized as an outstanding conservationist and as a former Tennessee Cattleman of the Year. And his current projects are centered around mastering charcuterie and mentoring the next generation of farmers on sustainable agriculture. He's on the farm. He can usually be found at the University of Tennessee, where he's chaired professor at the Haslam College of Business. So lots of experiences there across the industry. And we're also joined today with a wonderful guest who came in, Mariel Barreras, who's the owner and operator of Barreras Family Farms. It sounds like it all began with a small abandoned flock of chickens and turkeys during a military deployment. And then they moved that whole flock to Omaha, if I'm reading correctly on the website. And that has expanded into selling eggs, starting their own now trademarked Rent a Chick educational program, and then also shifted into grass-fed beef and pastured pork, and focusing on sustainable practices and partnering with other farmers near the Omaha, Nebraska area. So we're thrilled to have her joining us today, and she's brought some really cool pricing tools to share with you. So all that being said, we're going to jump into the meat of the, no pun intended, meat of the show. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Tim and Alex and Mariel.
All right. So be gentle. This is my first hosting of this thing here, so I'm going to do my best. Alex is the usual guy and got it down. So I would say, of all things to talk about, pricing is one of the most foundational and important topics there is. And it often, particularly from what I've seen in my own experience, as well as talking to others, particularly those who are producing the product themselves for distribution direct to customers, it doesn't get as much thought about it as it should, because we're also busy moving the cows, all of the technical aspects of farming and costs or whatever it is. It's just sort of like, oh, what's their price for that? I'll do that, right? And it's not necessarily grounded in any sort of recognition of actual costs of a particular item relative to how it fits into a carcass or to a system, and also how it fits from a marketing standpoint. And those two things are probably equally important in the long game that you're playing when you're selling directly to consumers. And so I think, delving into this is super important for everybody. So let's just start with one of the questions, around pricing, and pricing obviously is what determines your profit margin. So Alex, what is your approach, and how do you think about pricing relative to the profit margin you're trying to achieve for your operation, and maybe a secondary why?
Yeah. First, let me underline something that you said there, Tim, about this doesn't get enough attention. I was at the International Grasslands Congress last week, and 5 days of programming, not a single person ever talked about marketing or pricing. It was like, if you can produce the stuff, it'll just magically somehow be successful, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm glad you set that up this way. Our approach at Skillet is we produce 100% grass-fed beef and lamb, and then we do no corn, no soy, pigs, and chicken. And we take two approaches to pricing. One is the cost and margin approach that Mariel's going to demonstrate with her spreadsheets. And the other approach that we take, that I'll be demonstrating, is we do comparative pricing. And just as you said, that it seems to us that both of those are equally important. Neither one of them can quite get us where we want to be. And I think we'll be serving everybody's needs if we demonstrate both of those approaches. And I'm delighted that Mariel's come on board and is can help out with that. So that's the approach we take. It seems to be working reasonably well for us. You asked a question about the market, the margins that we try to achieve. For reasons that we can go into, we don't focus on net margin. We focus on gross margin. And we use as a rule of thumb that on all of our enterprises, we start out with the assumption that a 40% gross margin, that's revenue minus the direct cost of goods sold. So none of the fixed costs go in there. But we want to see a gross margin of 40%. And it seemed like if we can hit that number, that we can probably live with that business. But that's the only margin number we're looking at right now. But back to you, Tim.
And in that 40%, do you consider sort of what I would call the cost of sales? Do you include that, which is, so looking at a particular channel, like my cost of selling this beef at a farmer's market versus through retail, how do you fit, just so we know where that fits in the waterfall?
Great question. So we have different enterprises, and one of those enterprises is marketing and sales. So we're looking for a 40% margin when it moves from production to marketing. And then we're also telling marketing, you figure out how to get a 40% margin when you sell it. So that we get two
Okay.
bites at the apple there. And it's up to the marketing folks to figure out the relative merits of one channel versus the other. I will say this, our overall goal is to hit a revenue target that we've got, serving the smallest number of customers possible. So we're not eager to constantly be finding new customers. What we're eager to do is deepen our relationships with a smaller number of customers. So we're actually in this process trying to cut down the number of channels that we currently serve. We think that we got spread a little too thin in our eagerness initially. So we're doing some pretty critical analysis on where do we think we're going to find those customers that we can actually live with and that will take us where we need to go. But customers are a tremendous cost, and serving customers. And as soon as you've got that one customer out there that says, yes, but I want my chicken feet skinned, I want them peeled before I buy. And if you start listening to that, then you're like, your head will just explode. And so you have to, in our experience at least, we have to constantly be saying, that's an opportunity we're not going to pursue. The business will be smaller, but the business will have fewer customers, but better customers, bigger sales, more profit.
Got it. And that makes so much sense and is often not how people approach it. And part of it is because don't take a thoughtful approach of your price, sort of the other side of the coin, your price relative to your costs. You're always sort of trying to run faster, farther, harder to get more customers to subsidize for the fact that you don't have enough margin, because you either don't know your costs or you didn't set your price right. So let's use that as a jumping off point for Mariel to talk about that side of the equation, which you've done a lot of work on in terms of understanding your costs, how to cost things relative to the carcass, and obviously how that rolls up into a pricing model that hopefully is sustainable and works and keeps you off that hamster wheel that Alex described.
Well, we're still beginning farmers. So as Clay alluded to, my husband was active duty Army for 21 years. So ranching is our retirement plan from the Army. And so we have so much more to learn. And this actually came about understanding our profit margins because our bookkeeper noticed that the more cows we were selling, the more we were going in the red. And she didn't quite understand why we were going in the red so much every time we sold a pound of ground beef. And so that made me pause, because I'm working so hard to provide a quality product to our customers. Why am I not getting ahead? And so we sat back, and that's when we started looking at our numbers and really taking the time to weigh the cows and the pigs and piece them out and just try to understand where our monies were going, but then where they were coming from. So a lot like Alex said, though, too, we are in that same position. We were successful with being awarded some national grants, and although it was a blessing, it was also a curse, because we spread ourselves too thin trying to get more customers. And this year we have reevaluated to go deep with the ones that we have and just strengthen those relationships, because that, I'm hopeful, will give me a little bit of peace this year and just focus on the depth instead of the quantity. So, yeah.
You're trying to achieve your retirement.
Well, I never want to retire. I just have too much energy.
I know. You picked a heck of a business. No, it's a great business.
Right.
That's really interesting to, like, that's a pretty visceral thing to have hit you, is the more we sell, the worse we are. That's the old, you can't make it up on volume thing that we talk about, right? I'm losing a nickel every time and we're going to make it up on volume. That does not work. And so how did you go through that process? Because of course, in the meat business, it's all about how the carcass flows through from a costing and pricing standpoint. how do you think about that? Is there anything you learned that was surprising in that process, or any aha moments?
The biggest aha moment, I think, as a beginning farmer is starting it. I took all the classes and I go to the conferences, but not a lot is ever talked about pricing. And so they give you the very basics with, keep your receipts and put items in QuickBooks, whatnot. The basics don't actually cut it when you're trying to have a profitable business. And so it took me looking outside of the farming community at business models and business books and research to actually find some of the answers that I was looking for, and then take that back and then convert it into agriculture. So the details are super important. And going back and looking at not just all my costs, but then getting back that cow and weighing every single piece. And we used to be able, with our butcher, he used to provide us a spreadsheet that he could print off for us. It made it so much easier. But then for whatever reasons, that was too much work for him. And so now I actually have to go back and delegate out certain employees that I trust with numbers and that can calculate out every cost and every item. So until I have consistency, a year or two of consistency where I know things and I'm confident, I want to do it this way. I might change that up once I have more, but
it will probably never end, right? You're always going to be refining. I mean, that's just
I hope so.
reality,
Otherwise,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, you're not going to get bored.
No.
Alex, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, Mariel, we can pull up your spreadsheet anytime you want. I think Clay's got it, or Beth won, if you want to share that with folks at this point.
Yeah, sure.
I think Beth's getting it.
And while we're waiting there, one of the questions was about how each of you are selling your product, whether it's by the cut, quarter, halves, wholes, and sort of how you got to those places, or how you think about those two different models of, selling in a manner in wholes, quarters, and halves to automatically balance the carcass versus the pieces, parts.
Yeah, since the spreadsheet's up here, Tim, let's cover that and then come back and talk about shares versus this other. I think
good.
That's a good question.
Yep.
Mariel?
Sure. So here's a spreadsheet on one of our cows that went in. This cow 365. Some of the cows we raise ourselves, and then because we only have 70 acres, we also work with another farmer, two different farmers actually, who have the same practices that we do, but have their own property. And so I always make sure that I'm detailed on who's butchering it and who's raising it, so that I can kind of watch. When I'm purchasing it from the other farmer, it's a lot easier for me to do the math, because obviously they're taking care of their own feed costs and those. So I'm just worried about the cost for the cow, which you can see there. So this one is simpler, and that's why I submitted it, just because it has just the poundage, the transportation fee, and then the numbers break down from there. Butcher fees have been increasing the past couple of years, and so I'm very careful to watch those and try to have open communication with my butcher, because if he prices out the butcher fees too much and I can't get more money for my meat, then that will come around and affect him too. So it's got to be an open dialogue between the farmers and the processors as well. What I do here is these are the standard cuts that we do. There are sometimes, for example, now in the season, roasts are not a big seller. That's more of a winter product. And so the cows that I just took into butcher last week won't have roasts. And so the new spreadsheets will look different. But this is from a winter butcher. So those are the standard cuts. It has the approximate weights, and it calculates out the purchase cost per pound. So I know where my break even is. And then it changes based on the weight of the cow or the cuts that I have. And I like the spreadsheet because it will automatically adjust it for me versus me doing it old fashioned with pen and paper. So that was really great to actually learn how to put together myself. So the profit's really important because then I can look at my overall bills of whatever I need in order to run my business and my household and my employees. And I can say, okay, well, based off of this number, I need to raise, 25 head, 75 head, 200 head, in order to make the profit that I need to have on the other end. So I don't know if you
While
have
we're looking at
questions
this
from there.
sort of big picture view of
Yeah.
the carcass, how do you think about maximizing the margin on a given carcass? Any learnings from using this tool, interacting with your customers, their likes and dislikes? How do you ebb and flow on, how much burger versus roast and all of that, and how does that impact your total margin?
It changes slightly seasonally. Like I said, there's no sense me having a bunch of roasts in the freezer right now because they're not going to sell. And same with like briskets. Briskets for some reason here are not a big seller, but they are a big seller coming up to St. Patrick's Day. So we have to time out when we actually start saving the brisket so that we have enough to make into corned beef for the season. So it's really just kind of timing because I don't want to.
And so sure, no, that makes total sense. And so do you do dynamic pricing within this model in terms of the retail price to sort of take the pressure off somewhere else? Like, for instance, if around St. Patrick's Day, your briskets, there's more demand than supply, do you price those up to maybe takes pressure off of the ribeye, or what, how do you think about that?
No, I mean, I don't ever, right now, I have not ever changed my prices to go lower. I do run periodic sales, but
Sure.
that's more just on an inventory. For example, I have a lot of ground beef right now and people are grilling up burger for Memorial Day. So it works to do not necessarily a sale, but an incentive. So if they buy this, then they get this free. So I'm still not lowering my cost or losing money. But we
So
just
you're from a marketing standpoint, putting focus.
Right. And then we just mark up the corned beef just because it's a specialty item, a specialty product. So.
Okay. Got it. You maximize the margin on that particular cut though, for that particular sort of peak. But you don't use that on the other side to say take price off of burger to end up in the same place or not have it in the freezer.
No, not yet. I haven't
no wrong or right answer, but I'm just curious. And that was a question from the group.
I don't.
Yeah. I mean, that might be the only reason I say that is there are times, and it's, beef business is notorious for everybody having a bunch of trim in the freezer, right? So there is, in business in general, we all know cash flow is so important, and those bricks in the freezer are literally frozen assets, frozen dollars, that if you can make them move, that's money in your account versus in the freezer. So, but I love this model, and it's just powerful. Even, everything is about, just like in marketing your burger, it's about focus. You may not even need to mark it down. You're just putting focus on its availability when people want it. This, from a management standpoint, is also about focus for us, right? Managing our business and looking at it through this tool. This makes you do the numbers, right? And that's what matters. And it's always amazing how, well, how few people often do the numbers to this detail, and equally amazing how far they get before they hit the wall. But I do know from my own personal experience, not doing the work like this, you will eventually hit the wall. So it's good as a early farmer, the sooner you can have the discipline that you have around this, the better, because it allows you to be much more strategic and thoughtful for the long term. So this is really an amazing tool.
One thing I wanted to add though too, and since we're being real and we're addressing farmers on this, for example, we just ran a tallow sale, but I actually did not discount my tallow. I needed to get it moved because we're coming into summer and tallow's not a big seller. It's more for the soaps and the everything that people are using in the winter months. I did not decrease, even though I had a sale. I actually, on my online marketing strategy, I increased the price that they saw, and I kept my new sale price as the standard price. But we moved a ton of tallow because of how we marketed it, and I didn't actually change any of my numbers. So I think that's really important for people to analyze and see, do they actually need to discount it? Should they discount it? Is there another way that they could approach it to utilize the marketing capabilities to their consumers?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I think that's really wise. That's one of the points I wanted to make is that tell everybody in the audience, remember when we're talking about changing prices here, it's a temporary thing, typical. It's on sale. We're not talking about going into your website and saying the new standard price for this is going to be lower. So it's a sale price, because if you adjust the standard price to something lower, not just offer it on sale, then you've got to someday go back to the customer and explain why you're raising it. So I think, first of all, raising the price and then offering it on sale is a proven technique, as Mariel just said. But if you are going to talk about raising prices, I think it makes sense to also be telling your consumers, hey, this price is going to go up in 6 months, and let them know in advance that while it's not on sale right now, relative to what the price is going to be in the future, it is on sale. And we like to give our customers a lot of forewarning that prices are going to be going up in the future. It's just, I think it helps us move product in the short term and then prepare them for that in the longer term as well.
Really good point. I also would just throw out, just from having, again, my own experience and others, is in anything, any business, is when you hear or when you see something in your business where you don't have enough of anything. This seems so obvious, but it's not. You don't have enough of a particular thing on an ongoing basis, you're not charging enough for it, right? Like that is, and I don't know why we don't see it when we're in it, but it's pretty common to hear people message that I never have enough of this. I could sell this all day long. It's like, well, raise your price. Like,
yeah,
more often than not. Go ahead, Alex.
We're going to have an interesting case study when we look at our data on bacon here in just a moment. So we've got some crazy prices on bacon just because of that reason. Before we leave this spreadsheet, though, I'd like for Mariel, could you talk about what you include as you move from gross profit margin to total net profit? What do you include in there that's not included in gross profit? What expenses?
From my gross margin here?
As you move from gross to net, what are things that you include in your calculation of net that you don't include in your calculation of gross? So your net profit is lower.
Give me a minute, because
okay.
I want to answer you correctly.
It's going to be, I'm assuming it's your fixed cost.
I'm going to have to say I wasn't prepared for that question.
And okay, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what we do, and maybe it'll spark something new. But the only thing that we include in our gross, let's just take the pig business. So the people in our production enterprise for pigs, they know that they paid this for a weaned pig, they paid this for feed, and they know what they transfer that pig to marketing for. So that what they transfer to marketing for is the revenue, and they know the direct costs associated with producing that pig. And that gives them the gross profit. We don't have them look at net profit because the net profit would include allocation of a bunch of fixed assets that are scattered across a whole slew of different enterprises. And we consider that net profit to be a corporate issue for the entire farm, not an issue specific to an individual enterprise. So we don't really look at net profit. That's the reason I was asking how you made those allocations to move from gross to net. We don't want our individual enterprise owners worried about that because we don't have any good. Let's say that we spend $40,000 a year in accounting cost. How are we going to allocate those across 6 different production enterprises? We don't have a good method, so we just don't do it. Instead we just focus on gross profit. But that's our own approach, and I wondered if you had a different approach. But that's okay. I didn't mean to catch you.
I actually, no, you're fine, and I don't mind being put on the spot. Like I said in the beginning, I'm still learning all of this, and when I put this together with my husband, this was something that we had copied from others of what was in it, and so unfortunately I don't have as much experience, and I don't have an answer for that. But
you got the key thing. Your key thing here is that, and I love the way you described it. You know what your gross profit is per unit. On this one, it's 5,230, and you can do the quick math. It says, okay, if each one of them's generating this much contribution margin, 5,230, how many do we need to be moving a year to hit X target? And that's exactly the right way to think about it. And you can say, well, we've got $50,000 of fixed cost, and at 5,000 a pop, we need to sell 10 just to cover our fixed cost, not pay ourselves anything, just to cover that fixed cost. And I think that's exactly the kind of mindset that our audience needs to be walking away from this with. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, great approach. Why don't we jump? We were talking about pricing and maximizing pricing on a particular item and how you think about that. You want to jump to Alex's
Sure.
study on
Beth, you want to put up those slides? So we take 2 approaches. One is the cost up approach and looking at margin that Mariel just demonstrated. And then the other one is we look at the marketplace and try to understand what other people are doing in the market. And we use both of those to influence our decisions. And I don't want this to sound too scientific. I'll tell you, if you've heard our talks before, you know that Skillet's brilliant corporate strategy is we're going to try a lot of stuff and keep what works. And this is an example of just trying a lot of stuff and keep what works. I want to click you through 4 or 5 slides here in a hurry, just so you get a feel for it. If you don't know that these data are out there, you should probably find out about them. This is USDA data that's collected on and reported on a monthly basis, specific to grass-fed. We use the data that is supplied by North Carolina. It's USDA data, but it's for North Carolina. We're in East Tennessee. We're actually closer to a lot of North Carolina than we are to West Tennessee. And we like the way they present their data. So we just standardize on this. And you can see they've got it broken down by bulk and also by share. In other words, you can see half or quarter there, as well as by piece. And that serves our purposes pretty well. The data we look at is the median. So that's the last column. And the median, if you're not familiar with that term, it is the midpoint. Half of all the respondents are below that price. So you take filet mignon, it's half are below $30 a pound and half are above $30 a pound. And you can see the range there. It ranges from $20 to $43. That's in the first column. And what we try to do is say, we think our sweet spot is somewhere at the upper end of that distribution, maybe the 75th percentile or something like that. Again, this is not scientific. It just feels right to us. And one of the main reasons we use these data is to convince ourselves to price as high as we do. We're awfully tempted to say, wait a minute, that just seems outrageous to be charging $36 a pound for fillets. And we look at it and say, well, wait a minute, the range is 20 to 42. There's nothing outrageous about it. So Beth, could you flip through the other ones just to give a feel for what the other slides have? So here's the same data from pork. Again, we use North Carolina. You can see it's by share and by piece. Really useful data for us. And let's go to lamb. I think is in our chickens next. On this one, it includes it includes eggs as well, which is useful data for us. We produce broilers and layers. And then the last one is going to be lamb, same sort of stuff. And we find this to be very useful data just to embolden us to not compare ourselves to the local Walmart, but to compare ourselves to other people that are actually in our business. We are not in the business that Walmart is in. You have to keep reminding yourself of that. And let's go one step further and you'll see the other data. So this is a report. We ask our interns to generate this. We pick 3 representative cuts from each of our 4 enterprises. We look at the USDA national average here, as well as our own prices. That's the second column. And then we have data from 3 local grocery stores. We have a Whole Foods. We have a local co-op called Three Rivers Market that we look at. And then we have a fresh market. And we think a lot of our local customers are looking at those 3 markets. We also look at the national online retailers. So if you're going to order it from ButcherBox, what's it look like? And we've got actually 4 of those in the last report here. And then we also look at regional aggregator brands. We look at Hickory Nuts over in Asheville, North Carolina, Seven Sons up in Indiana, and Grassroots in Arkansas. Those are 3 regional companies that we think a lot of and respect their work. This data is really dirty. It comes with a bunch of footnotes. Each one of those little red triangles represents a footnote that has additional explanatory power behind all this that you have to take in consideration. To tell you the truth, I don't remember what the coloring, the dark green, the light green, I don't know what that was about in this particular report. The last column is Walmart data, and we put that in there not because it's a target, but because if we ever have anyone who comes at us and says, well, I can buy this cheaper at Walmart, we want to know what the Walmart price is, and we want to have a ready responsive, yep, and here's what's different about it. They can't touch our quality. We can't touch their cost. We're okay with that. And really the way we look at this, and it gets down to a marketing conversation rather than just a pricing conversation. We've identified two market groups that we serve, and they're at the extremes. We call them the Prius owners and the pickup owners. And the Prius owners tend to be liberal, tend to be well-educated, tend to be working professionals, and they like to shop. They're foodies. They like to spend a lot of money on food. They buy from us because we're one notch better than buying from Whole Foods. At least that's the story we tell ourselves. At the other end of the equation, we have the pickups, and the pickups tend to be very conservative. They're often homesteaders and preppers. They don't want to buy into the industrial model, and they buy from us because they can't raise everything that they want on their homestead. And those are the 2 stereotypical customer types that we have. And if you think about, both of those people have one thing in common. Food is a passion for them, and it speaks to their values. And they literally want to spend money on food. I had a good example of this 2 weeks ago. I had a lady who was buying food for her dogs, and she came to us wanting to buy ground lamb. And I see our ground lamb is under this, it's $10 a pound according to these data. And I said, well, if you're going to feed it to the dogs, you need some sort of discount. No, absolutely not. I wouldn't feed our dogs anything that I wouldn't eat ourselves, and price is part of it. That woman is passionate about her dogs, and if it makes her feel good to spend money on her dogs. And you think, well, that's just weird. You think about yourself. There's something that you're passionate about that you're okay spending an amount of money that other people would think you're insane for. My sister goes to Las Vegas. I think that's absolutely insane. Why would anybody go to Las Vegas? But that's what she wants to do, and she wants to spend money when she gets there. I'm not that way at all, but I am that way about bicycles and cameras, and I'll spend a fortune on bicycles and cameras, and she thinks I'm nuts for doing that. You have to get your head around the fact that your consumers are not spending money out of your wallet. They're spending money out of their values. And if you can't find someone who resonates with the value that you bring to the marketplace, you're not going to be successful in this business. If all they're doing is buying cheap protein, you will always be undersold by the factory farms. And you've got to find that niche that allows you to say, I'm not a factory farm, I'm proud of it. You are a boutique wine producer, and you can't sell a $500 bottle of wine for the same price as $2 chuck. You just got to get your head around that. So be really careful when you do this market, these comparisons, and don't say, well, I've got to be within spitting distance of the lowest price. Not if that's, you don't have to do that unless that's your value proposition. So that's I'll get off my soapbox now, Tim.
That is, amen. Like that is the most important
That was great.
thing. That is so important. I just want to call out two things. One that you sort of glossed over at the beginning relative to the market reports was that it sort of gave you some confidence in, maybe I would call it grounding in your pricing. And I think it's important to recognize, my experience and my own included, is most people don't err. If they're going to make an error, it's not that they've priced too high. It's always that they've priced too low, right? That's what I typically see. They don't price things high enough. That's sort of a universal truth. And the reason why is because it's scary. It's literally just scary. I mean, I remember myself thinking, about the price of yogurt we were selling or whatever, and we needed it to be higher, but I was afraid if I went higher, I was going to lose revenue, and and you get this death spiral thing in your head that you're going to all fall apart, which sometimes can be true. Again, it goes down to grounding. And so you had those reports that you look at. They're sort of like a sanity check that help you be less afraid of doing things. And then you go out into the marketplace and you get actual data. And when you put those things, from your local market, that's really powerful from a psychological standpoint as a business owner to be able to do that.
I'll tell you an important trick in that, Tim, is before you look at any of these data, just sit and ask yourself, how valuable do I think my product is relative to its quality and its attributes that we bring to consumers? I mean, we do no corn, no soy. If we're not able to charge a premium price for that, we're nuts for doing no corn, no soy. The market's just not going to reward us.
Correct.
So we have to think about that before we anchor in on that blasted Walmart price. Because once we see the Walmart price, we'll come up from that. That's not ever going to get us to the point we need to be. And that's the reason that going into all this, we said we think the 75th percentile is a good place for us to be. I actually think it's a little bit low. But that forced us not to even look at the median, but to say, well, when we see a median price, we immediately say, so we've got to be above that. Not we've got to be below it. Because a lot of people, when they look at the average price, they'll say, I'm trying to get in the market, I need to be below that. And what we would immediately say is, no, we need to be well above the median and up toward the tail of the distribution. So we look at the median and the range on that USDA data. I promised to do the case study.
Great way to look at it.
Look at this bacon on line 15 of this chart. You'll see the national price for bacon is $11.64. We're at $17.90. We're doing some experimentation with pork prices right now. So we're really low on ground and really high on bacon. We're just doing some odd things to see how the market responds to it. But one of the reasons that bacon is so high is that we can't keep bacon. Even at $18 a pound, the stuff sells out. And we're as an organization, it's part of our values. We'd like to be able to feed our neighbors. We've got a whole lot of neighbors that we can't feed at $18 a pound. They're just not going to pay that, and I understand why. On the other hand, we've got other customers that absolutely want to spend $18 a pound on, because it's an indicator of the quality, and bacon means something to them, and they feel very good about spending $18 a pound on bacon, just because it's the same reason that you might feel good about paying $500 for a bottle of wine. Not me, but somebody would. And if they had that same bottle of wine, for this very same bottle of wine for $50, they would not be interested in buying it. So you've got to get your head around that aspect of marketing as well.
And how you're
bacon being my favorite vegetable, I agree. Oh, sorry, Mariel.
No, but how those are all so super important. It comes down to teaching your employees or your staff or just yourself how to communicate that with your consumer, because like our bacon as well, not only is it pasture raised, no corn, no soy, any of that, but it's also no chemicals. So it's just old sea salt and herbs in the curing process. And so like communicating the healthiness of it is really important that I train my staff on that. Otherwise, if they're not articulate, then they won't know how to close the sale and win somebody over, or not win them over, but show them that there's a healthier way. They're already in there questioning it, but then give them the right answers,
Yeah.
that they need.
You need to find the person who says,
I
well,
think
I'd pay anything to get no nitrates. I see plates up, so I'll be quiet.
No, you're good. I was just gonna pop on and time check
go
us
ahead,
real quick.
Clay.
Yeah, we've got about 7 minutes left in our hour, and I want to be conscious of other things people have to do. So far, no questions in the chat, but it's a small group now. People have had to drop out, so this is a great opportunity to come on and ask us a specific question if you have one, or if we haven't addressed the thing that you wanted to talk about. I know we've covered a lot. And then while I'm on real fast, I wanted to ask, there have been a request to, can we share your pricing tools out to attendees of the Lowdown? Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Cool. We'll
You
make sure that
certainly
those are in the
can.
email. Yeah, great. We'll make sure those are in the email for folks when that goes out tomorrow with the video link and then office hours information. So we'll make sure all those tools are in there. So thanks for being willing to share. I'm going to get out of the way.
One thing I want, no, great, thanks, Clay. One thing I wanted to bring up about the bacon, and it actually came out in some of the Grass-Fed Alliance research about that there are things that people splurge on, right?
Mhm.
And that's sort of some of what we're talking about, even within, so you guys exist in a particular niche of customer in terms of their demographic, their spending patterns, how they value food, but even within that niche, everything is relative. And so thinking about the carcass, you can do things with bacon because usually we're not eating that every day. Like every Sunday morning, I make bacon for my family, right? And I want really good bacon. I'm not going to be able to do the same thing on ground beef. And so even within your niche, sort of optimizing around use case or what have you is important. And I just wanted to back up what Alex was saying about price being so important with just a quick anecdote. This is a dairy thing, but it's universal. When Maple Hill, we went into Whole Foods nationally with our half-gallon milks for the first time, and Whole Foods being notorious for not being able to do anything right in their stores. We were supposed to go out for $5.99 across the board. We went out everywhere between $3.99 and $8.99, even within the same region, same city. So you had every pricing under the sun for the same product everywhere. And what happened was we sold more units of milk at $8.99 because it's better. The price is the marketing. The mistake was we didn't say, oh, when you fix that problem, make it $6.99 or $7.99. We fixed it at $5.99. And that was a strategic error that we made. So it is one of the most real and most important things for what folks here are doing in terms of selling special products direct is to recognize that the perception the consumer has around quality and value is all wrapped up in how much price there is attached to it relative to the alternative. So
I've got an example that I think everybody can identify with. If you're going to somebody's home and you want to take a bottle of wine, one of the things you'll do is go into the wine shop and say, I want to buy a $75 bottle of wine. I don't normally drink $75 wines, but I want to make something. I want to make sure it's a special thing. So I want to spend $75 on a bottle of wine. And that's the same mindset your customers have when they come and say, I want to spend $18 on bacon. We had a guest on a couple of shows back that specialized in sausages, and he's selling them $18 a pound. He's got customers that want to spend $18 a pound on sausage, and you have to get your head around that.
And as farmers, we're often all cheap, right? So it's a very foreign thing. Reality. We're thrifty, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to sneak in real fast. We got a couple minutes left and maybe room for one more question that we've just received in the chat. Any thoughts? This is for all three of you. Any thoughts on flexible pricing, such as giving a discount to customers using SNAP, but keeping my prices in a higher percentile for others?
I just had a conversation with a fellow farmer on this, and we disagreed, but that's certainly okay. They don't do SNAP because they said that they don't want the stigma that goes along with people utilizing SNAP in their store. And they don't want to have to deal with any issues or problems that would come along with people that can't afford the meat anyways. If they can't afford it, they don't want them there. At the same time, though, I have 8 children and I want to provide quality food for my family. And if I wasn't raising it myself, and if I wasn't savvy with bartering with fellow farmers to get the product that I need, I would want the opportunity. If I was in a situation where I was on an assistance program, I would want the opportunity to buy a higher quality product. And so we have a store in Omaha, brick and mortar, and in that facility we do offer SNAP and WIC on the products that are in there, because we want to be able to provide that to anyone, whether they can afford it with cash or they have to use an assistance program. And so we found it a benefit and we haven't seen an issue. And I don't know if that'll change. So it is what it is now. So
I think this question really gets to your values and what you stand for. And I know that's very much in the ethos of the Good Meat Project to want to be able to provide high quality but affordable products to folks that are going to be concerned about that. Even though we spent most of this session talking about being willing to charge a price, we also go out of our way to find a couple of ways to deliver lower price. We have a honors market farm stand just for the local community. So folks, and it's going to be the cheapest place to buy our food. It's still not cheap, but it's cheaper than in any other place that you can buy it. And we also have a partnership with a food pantry that we deliver a lot of food through the food pantry under a USDA grant to make local foods available to folks who don't pay anything for the food. And so those are a step in that direction, but it is a constant struggle and a discussion of our values and what do we stand for as a family farm to weigh those issues.
Yeah, those are awesome examples.
A mistake we made too is watch your profit margins, because in the years ago, because we're a military family, we offered military discounts and our numbers weren't right. And then we weren't pricing in the discounts that we were giving as well. And so that got us really in the hole. We were trying to do a good thing, but our prices were not correct. We didn't understand our expenses. And then we were giving with our heart and giving a good thing, but it was actually really hurting us. So just watch any discounts that you do, and then don't have your customers depend on them, that they're only buying from you to get the discount either. That is sometimes a trend.
Yeah, because this is such a value-laden topic.
Go ahead, Alex.
Because this is such a value-laden topic, we explicitly identify, and one of their 7 guiding values for the whole family business is no margin, no mission. So we have a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish as a farm. We call that our mission. And without a margin, we can't do any of it. So we have to acknowledge that we're not a charity. We want to do everything we can, but we have a lot of other missions beyond charity that we need to support, and it requires a margin to do that. So that's where we are in our discussion of this issue. Tim, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. That is so good. It's basically saying in a better way what I was going to say is there's a season for all things, and particularly when you're first starting out, you have to make sure you're not, putting yourself on SNAP, literally by being more generous than you can afford. And at a certain point, by doing the right things on your business and having margin, then you have a season where you can afford to do that and should do that, right? We all believe in that, but you can't solve every problem, right? You can't own it all. And the having margin is what gives you the luxury to pursue your mission and all of those things forever versus short-term focus. So I think the way you said it is perfect. I'm going to steal that phrase there, Alex. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a great note, I think, almost to end on. What do you think, Tim? Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, I want to just be conscious again. It's 11:02, and I appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. I want to thank Tim for jumping in the driver's seat of this here airplane today. I
Well,
really
hopefully
appreciate
hopefully I
that.
did all right.
And you did.
You
It
did
was
great.
enjoyable.
You did wonderful. Yeah. And I want to thank Alex and Mariel for coming on and talking so
Mariel,
fun.
thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
thank you.
I learned a lot from you.
It's a
Thank
cool,
you,
this is a cool
everyone.
thing. Yeah, this is great. And so I'll be sending out the link to the video tomorrow. I'll include the tools we looked at today that Alex and Mariel provided. Thanks so much for sharing that with everyone. And then also, I think, Alex, you were talking about USDA data. If you have a link to that, would you email it to me and I'll also include it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll send that out too in the email. For folks who go home this weekend and think about pricing, which we're all going to do now, which we were already going to do, but we're going to do it even more. Tim is on hand on Tuesday to talk more about this. We've got an hour set aside. So seriously, take advantage of that. Come in. This is a chance to talk about your farm, your operation, and the questions that you have. So join us. We'll be there. We'll also be sure to record that too and share out the findings we have, the learnings that we do together. So just another quick round of thanks. Appreciate everyone and hope to see everyone on Tuesday who can make it.
Thank you so
Great
much. This
day.
was all incredibly useful and such a better perspective to come at this. So thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.